Hi, Congressman and Tom. I appreciate you taking my call. The narrative seems to be that, right now anyway, that the Republicans are wanting to make egregious cuts in funding that are not logical, and then the Democrats are sort of against it. And I'm thinking that against those kinds of cuts. But I think there are a lot of us, at least myself included, that would like to know that there's a serious conversation going on about the debt, or a thoughtful one about how to move forward on that as a long-term issue. Is that happening someplace?
Steve, it is, and it's a pretty simple thing. If you reverse the tax breaks that Donald Trump gave to corporate shareholders and those who owned dividends, if you reverse the tax breaks that George W. Bush gave to the very wealthy, if you reverse the tax breaks that Ronald Reagan gave to the wealthiest Americans, and if you didn't have the overseas spending on these wars, we would be at a balanced budget. It's not the Democratic policies that have caused it. It has been tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans, and the reversal of that would do the most to help our deficits.
Yeah, I saw a guy had added up the consequences of 42 years of Reagan's dropping it from 74% down to 25%, and then at 15 years or whatever of George W. Bush's tax breaks, and then his 2 illegal wars, and then Trump's tax breaks. And if you add all that up, it's actually more than $34 trillion. So,
it really is. That Republicans complain about the deficits, but they're genuine, the ones who created it.
They created it. It was Jude Wanniski's strategy. He laid it out in the Wall Street Journal in 1977. Run up big deficits when Republicans are in office, and then when Democrats come into office, force them to shoot their own Santa by screaming about those very deficits. And it's worked. It's just amazing.
Who wrote that up, Ed? I haven't read it.
Oh, yeah. This was in 1977. A guy by the name of Jude Wanniski, who was a fairly famous Republican strategist, wrote this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal saying that the problem that at that time, this was when they were talking, this was in the wake of Jerry Ford couldn't even beat Jimmy Carter,
Right.
the Nixon meltdown. And there were books being written about whether the Republican Party would even survive this experience. And so he wrote this op-ed saying, the problem the Republicans have had since the 1930s is that they've always been perceived as Scrooge, and that the Democrats have always been perceived as Santa. Santa has given out, the Social Security, unemployment insurance,
right,
unionization, the whole list. And Republicans opposed to all of them. And he said Republicans have to do two things. They have to, number one, come up with something where they can be a Santa. And he proposed, let's be tax cut Santas. And then number two, what they have to do is they have to force Democrats to shoot their own Santa in the face, which is the welfare programs and entitlement programs. And his strategy for number two was whenever a Republican is in office, deficits spend like crazy. It'll stimulate the economy artificially and make people think Republicans can have a good economy. Reagan took our debt from $800 billion to $2.4 trillion in 8 years. And then number two, as soon as a Democrat comes into office, starts screaming about the national debt. And
I'll have to look this piece up.
I'll send you a whole article about it after we get off the air. I've written about it a number of times. I think you'll be fascinated by this. This is actually a strategy that they laid out in public, and they've executed now through 3 Democratic presidents. It's incredible.